Okay, welcome to class. I'm going to share my screen with the class notes. And as you can see, today is Tuesday, January 31st. And really, this is the day that the second draft of the second essay is due. I checked most of you have done that already. But if you're behind on that second essay, please try to get it in as soon as you can. And we're going to take a look at the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights today. And that's going to be the basis for essay number 3. So we'll go through the whole Human Rights Declaration. It's fairly long, 32 articles. I'll talk about each one, give you some advice about it, and then you'll be able to write a very similar essay to what you've written before. I want you to choose 3 of the articles or 3 parts of different articles and write about those. Or if you prefer, you can focus on one of the issues that is raised in the human rights, 1 or even 2 of the issues that are raised in the Human Rights Declaration. What's different about this essay is that you definitely need 3 outside sources in addition to the Universal Declaration itself. This is what we call for this class the major project. So this is really the most important piece of writing that you'll do this term. So try to focus on that as much as you can. Okay, so today is Tuesday. Tomorrow, no class. You'll be working on your essays. Here's Thursday. We will have a class, and we'll take a look at some of the essays that people have submitted and go over some of those the way we've been doing and just check in to see how everybody's doing with the essay. And then next, and so here I'm basically saying, if you can get this essay done in 2 days, okay, but that's a little fast. I understand that. So if you can't get the essay in until Thursday, that's really okay. Let's move that around. Thursday is probably better. Okay, so I'll give you till Thursday. Oh, that is the same day. Sorry. All right. Some of you will be able to get the essay in by Thursday. Otherwise, certainly try and get it in by Monday. Next week, we're going to have our last class on February 7th. And I'll give you the final exam questions to look at. So you really need to get to work on essay 3 pretty quickly. But you will have a little bit of time. That's our last Zoom class. You'll have until February 9th to get the final exam draft in. Draft 2. You can certainly put in draft 1, whatever you want. So think about that time schedule like that. And put your mind to writing essay number 3. Most of you have been doing a really good job, and I think you'll continue to be able to do that. So let me just stop the share there for a moment. Okay, we got a bunch of people. Anybody have any questions about the schedule, about how we're working here? Anything like that? Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this declaration, as some of you may know, the United Nations was formed after World War II because of all the horrors that took place in World War II, the Holocaust and Hitler and all those things related to that. And so the United Nations was formed, and one of the first things they did was they decided to promulgate a Declaration of Human Rights. So here's the preamble. I won't go through the whole preamble with you, but basically, they looked at this as a common standard of achievement for all people and all nations. So this was the first time in history that the entire world, or a body claiming to represent the entire world, put forth the idea of human rights and that all people should be enjoying these rights. The United States signed this Universal Declaration, and so did all of the other member states of the United Nations. And today, I think there's 130 some odd countries in the United Nations, and that represents just about all the countries on Earth. So we'll go through the articles. You will notice many similarities between the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. One thing I will tell you, many people are really not aware of this Human Rights Declaration and what's in it, even though when the United Nations put forth the idea here, they put forth this as something that should be taught in the schools so that the new generations should learn about and know about human rights and therefore behave according to human rights, treat each other according to human rights. So when you hear the notion of human rights, this is the document that actually spells out what those human rights are that everybody in the world has agreed to. Okay, let's go on. Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Now you notice, it doesn't say everybody's the same. That idea of equity that has been around really means that people are the same. No, this Human Rights Declaration says people are equal in dignity and rights. We all have the same rights, and we all deserve the same respect, the same dignity. That's what the Human Rights Declaration says. And all people are endowed, are given, right, with reason and conscience, and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Now, of course, this was 1948. The language is certainly a little older than we might use today. So that concept of brotherhood, which was a very meaningful concept at the time, that word might not be the word we would use for brotherhood today. Humanity might be a word we might want to use today. But here, clearly, the notion is that people should act logically, reasonably towards each other. They should act with goodwill towards each other, and they should respect each other. That's basic. And so all people deserve that. All people deserve respect and to be treated rationally and logically. Here's Article 2, and some of these are longer and some of these are shorter, just like with the Bill of Rights. Everyone's entitled to all rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration. So the idea is these human rights are for everybody without any distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion that you can see, birth status, etc. The idea is people are all equal with regard to these rights, regardless of who they are or where they come from. And no distinction shall be made on the basis of political grounds. So it doesn't matter where you're living, whether you live in a country that's independent or a country that's ruled by another country or any other way. People are people wherever they live around the world, and they are entitled to these human rights. Of course, at the time, in 1948, there were still countries were ruling other countries. Not as many countries were independent. It wasn't until 1949, for example, I believe, that India became an independent nation. It was still under the rule of Great Britain, of England, until 1948, 1949. Similarly, Pakistan was created in 1948, 49, I can't remember exactly. And when they divided up the land and said, okay, this country is Pakistan, this country is India. So there were a lot of changes in the political topography of the world right after World War II. And so they wanted to make sure that everybody understood that these human rights were for everybody, regardless of country that they might live in. Here's Article 3. Look at that, really short. Everybody has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Now, you remember from the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And this is the same right to life that you have written about and you've studied about and you're familiar with. This is the same concept of liberty, freedom within the law. Once again, the law plays a very big role here. And of course, rather than pursuit of happiness, here they put in security of person, which maybe just another way of saying the right to life, or maybe says something more. It's not really explained here. All right, that might be a right to privacy. Not entirely sure. Here's Article 4, another short one. And this one's very clear. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. So this is the first time that the world is recognizing that slavery is not a way for people to relate to each other in the world. Of course, you may know about human trafficking. There's plenty of slavery around the world today. People are concerned about that in terms of people coming to the United States over the southern border, but it's all over the world. There are issues about human trafficking, which is the modern word that's used for slavery, since clearly here, slavery is prohibited. And once again, you're going to be able to choose to write about any of these articles, any three of these articles, any two of these articles, or even any one, and focus your essay on that issue that it brings up, that it addresses. Here's Article 5. No one shall be subject to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. That you can hear the echoes of the Bill of Rights there. And of course, in the United States, torture was cruel and unusual punishment was interpreted as torture. But here it's very clear. People should not be tortured in any way, or they should not be treated in a degrading way, in a way that's insulting to them. Think about that. Think about, well, as we go through these rights, think about what they say about how people should relate to each other in the world. And of course, these are governments that are putting forth these articles, and they're talking about the way governments should behave. Not only how people should behave towards each other, but how governments should behave towards people and towards these other governments. Think about that as one aspect of this. It's Article 6, very important. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. That's that liberty echo there. So it doesn't matter whether you are in a country legally or illegally, you still have the right to recognition as a person before the law. You should be treated in a lawful way, regardless of who you are or where you are, regardless of what country you're in or what country you come from. Article 7, all people are equal before the law. No one's above the law. Everybody has the same laws. So that's now, of course, different countries have different laws. And so there's a very tricky thing that the United Nations, the group, was trying to do here. They're trying to put forth principles for the entire world to adhere to, but at the same time, they recognize that every country has different laws, every country has a different culture, every country operates in a different way. So they needed to come up with language that could apply everywhere, and at the same time allow the different countries with the different procedures and the different laws and the different cultures to cooperate and to agree with this notion of human rights. That was above all what they were after. So some of these rights are not as probably specific as you might want them to be, or you might think they should be. And one reason for that is because they needed to accommodate everybody in the world, which is a big place. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. Notice it doesn't say what the law should be. It just says, well, it basically says there's a law in this country, a law in that country. Everybody in this country should be treated equally before the law. Everybody in that country should be equally treated before the law, even though the laws may be different in different countries. All are entitled to equal protection against discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to discrimination. So here is that strong statement saying that this human rights declaration is put forth in order to make sure that people are treated equally and not discriminated against for whatever reason. Here's Article 8. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by the constitutional law. So see that tribunal, that's one of those words that they needed to use. We use the word court here, right? The law and the courts. And in many Western countries, it's called a court. But in other places around the world, in other cultures, they're referred to as tribunals. So this was a more general term that was used to mean all of those different mechanisms by which the law is implemented. And here, everyone has the right to an effective remedy, meaning that everybody has a right to be in court, to sue someone in court, to be represented in court, to have their issues dealt with by a court. They say competent national tribunals. Competent meaning not one that's corrupt, not one that's where people are bought off to, decide in a certain way, or they're not impartial. We talk about impartiality in the Bill of Rights. That's what they're leaning towards here. And if there are fundamental rights granted by constitutional law in every state, in every country, and people have equal rights to those. Here's number 9. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Arbitrary means not according to law, it means according to someone's whim or someone's desire, like a king or a monarch or something like that. So, so um, here is the plea that if anybody's going to be arrested or detained or thrown out of the country, exile is when you're thrown out of the country, that it has to be lawful, has to be according to law. So the law is, again, as you can see, playing a very, very important role here in this notion of human rights. The idea is that the law, that civilization really rests on legality, on the law, on everybody agreeing to obey and to be ruled over and to participate in the community based on the laws that we all agree on. Very important, because when people break the law, then they're breaking that contract with everybody else. They're in essence, when they're breaking the law, I refer to this with the United States with the civil rights, when they're breaking the law in the United States, they're taking away our liberty. When they're breaking the law in the world, they're taking away people's human rights. Because it's only through the law that people have these rights. The law is the mechanism for ensuring that people have human rights. You can have a concept, but if there's no way to implement that concept, if there's no way to make that concept a reality, then there are problems. And the way that the human rights are implemented, the way they become a reality for everybody in the world, is through the legal system. Here's Article 10. Everyone is entitled in full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal in the determination of his rights and obligations and of any criminal charge against him. So this is the article that basically ensures that people will have their day in court, that people shouldn't be just arrested and thrown in jail. Has to be a fair hearing, has to be a public hearing, not a private hearing. Has to be, people have to be able, we all have to be able to witness it. And the tribunal or the court, there it is, has to be impartial. So, and this is both in terms of people's rights and in terms of criminal charges. So again, this is a plea, this is a statement saying that the court system, the tribunals, are what guarantees that people have full equality. You can see how strongly the law plays into these ideas. Here's Article 11, it has two parts to it. This is one of those technical articles that deals with criminality. Everyone charged with a penal offense, that's a criminal offense, has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Now, you might have heard that phrase, innocent until proven guilty. It's sort of the way we operate in the United States. But there are countries around the world where that is not the case. In France, for example, you're not innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until proven innocent. Even though France signed this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it still lasts till today that in France, the prosecutor, who's a very powerful person in the law, can arrest somebody, throw them in jail, and then proceed to make the case against the person. Sort of the opposite way we do things here. So, but this is very clearly saying that the idea should be that people are innocent until proven guilty. And the guilty plea has to be in a public trial, which we've talked about before, and the defendant has to have all the things necessary to defend himself, just like in the Bill of Rights and the Miranda laws. The person who's being accused has to have protection against the state. Once again, these people recognize how powerful governments are and how the state, the government, can do so much against individuals that a lot of these human rights are in here in order to protect individual people from their own government. Here, no one shall be held guilty of a penal offense, criminal, on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a penal offense, or under international law at a time it was committed. So they can't, this is the key phrase here, at the time it was committed. So I do something today and they pass a law tomorrow saying that what I did yesterday was criminal, they can't arrest me for it because at the time I did whatever I did, it wasn't a crime. So that's the idea here, because of course you can see how a government could pass a law and say, oh, well, here's the new law and you broke it yesterday, we're going to punish you. So governments do all kinds of things in order to have the people cooperate and to control the people in different ways. And so a lot of these technical things like this, technical articles are here to show, to specifically state how the government can't do these kinds of things in order to hurt the people. Nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time the offense was committed. Same thing. If it was $1 fine when I committed the crime today, and tomorrow they say it's $1,000 crime, they can't go back to today and and fine me $1,000 for it. So this idea, they can't do things retroactively. They can't go back in time and say, oh, there's a different penalty for something. You might think, who would do such a thing? But if the entire world agreed that this should be one of the articles and that there should be two parts to this article, you can imagine the kinds of things that governments around the world do to people in order to control them, to punish them, to throw them in jail. Some of you might have more experience with that reality than I have. And if you want to write about things that you know about or you've experienced or you're aware of throughout the world, by all means, that can be the subject of your essay. Here's Article 12. Once again, there's that word arbitrary. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference. Remember, arbitrary is not according to law. If it's arbitrary, that means nobody's following the law. They're doing it at whim or will. Like those 5 police officers who punished that man so brutally, led to his death in Memphis. That was arbitrary. They arbitrarily decided to beat that guy up. It didn't happen according to law. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, or to attacks on his honor and reputation. Everyone has the right to protection of the law against such interference or attack. So here, we don't really have a right to privacy in the Bill of Rights, but right here in the Human Rights Declaration, the world is saying that people have a right to privacy, to home, to family, to papers, to possessions, whatever it may be, and to their reputations. And human rights, the concept of human rights is a very significant concept. Human rights is the basis upon which people are now prosecuted by the World Court for atrocities in war. You know about the war in Ukraine, and lots of people are complaining about the way Putin is conducting the war in Ukraine. And many people believe that some of the things that Putin is doing with his troops are human rights violations, and they're saying that those are atrocities and he should be called to account for that. And of course, I know a lot of you are familiar with Hitler, for example, and the Nazi Germany, and all of those people were tried in a court, a world court, and the basis upon which they were tried were human rights. They violated people's human rights, like the rights of life. So human rights is the highest standard of rights that people can have. If anyone's human rights are being violated, if you throw somebody into slavery, for example, doesn't matter what the law is anywhere. That's a violation of a person's human rights and should not be allowed. Here's Article 13. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state, meaning each country. This means that people are not tied to the land. In many places in the world, people were not allowed to leave the places where they lived or the places where they were born. So this is saying that people can freely move around the country in which they live. And then here, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. So once again, you can't restrict people from going out of the country and coming back into the country. People have the right to that kind of travel. Notice this does not say that people have the right to move from one country to another. It doesn't say that people should be able to immigrate from one place to another. The term really, the technical term for freedom of movement within the borders of each state is technically what we call migration. You migrate when you're moving around within your country. And when you move to another country, that's when you are an immigrant. I know those words are thrown around as if they're equal these days, but they really have different meanings. But you'll notice it doesn't say here that people can leave a country and pick up and go live in another country, that they have a right to leave a country and move to another country. So lots of issues here about immigration these days. These are two human rights that deal with those kinds of issues. Here, however, is another article that deals with that, Article 14, and this one's really clear. Everyone has the right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people coming to the United States, they're fleeing persecution of one form or another, discrimination, whatever it is, in their own countries. And that's the reason why the United States is letting so many people in these days, is because they're claiming asylum. And here you have it. It's a human right to be able to claim asylum. And so if somebody claims asylum, they have a human right to enter another country and flee their own. And then this one says, you can't do that if you commit a crime. If you're running away from the government because you committed some kind of crime, that's not a reason for asylum. Asylum has to do with persecution. Persecution has to do with those earlier articles that deal with discrimination and everybody's equal before the law and people should be treated with respect. So these two articles really have a lot to say about movement from one country to another. Here's Article 15. Everyone has the right to a nationality. You can't be a non-person. Everybody has the right to belong to a particular nation and to be a citizen in that nation. Nationality carries with it the idea of citizenship. Citizenship carries with it the idea of rights within the country. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor denied the right to change his nationality. Now, there's another one that's really, really tricky. And there's that word arbitrarily. Arbitrarily means not according to law. So yes, you can't by whim deny a person to change his or her nationality. But if there's a legal process, then the person who wants to change his nationality needs to follow the legal process in order to change it. So the human rights doesn't say that anybody can change their nationality whenever they want to. You can understand that government's not going to want their people just to leave, right? The governments want to keep their people in the country. So there's that tension between the world getting together and trying to establish human rights for everybody, and then each nation having its own interests there. But so the word arbitrarily is in here to show, if there's a legal way to change nationality, then people have the right to do it. They have the right to do it legally. They don't have the right to do it without the law. And as you know, lots of people are moving around the world and certainly coming to the United States. And in many cases, it's not according to the law. And so that's not a human right. If they do it by law, then it is a human right. If they don't do it by law, it's not a human right. You may think it's good, you may think it's bad. That's not the issue. We're just looking here at what the Human Rights Declaration says about it. Okay, so again, another article that deals with people moving around the world, changing countries and things of that nature. Take a look at this one. Of course, again, this isn't something some of you may take issue with, but here it is, 1948. Men and women of full age, without limitation to race, nationality, or religion, have the right to marry and found a family. This is a right to marriage. And interracial marriage, international marriage, interreligion marriage, no restriction on the way who the people are, who the men and women are, who are entering into marriage. Notice this doesn't say that a marriage is between a man and a woman. It does not say that. Certainly that was the common idea of the time, but it doesn't say that. It just says men and women have the right to marry and found a family. So this does not exclude men marrying men and women marrying women, for example. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage during marriage, meaning men and women in a marriage have equal rights. Any men and any women, whatever kind of marriage it is. So once again, there's this expression of equality before the law, equality in terms of rights. I'm not saying everybody's the same, but they are saying that people have equal rights before the law. Look at this one. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. So arranged marriage or forced marriage seems to be against the idea of human rights. And there still are cultures today where arranged marriages and forced marriages occur. Certainly, this was very much the standard in Western Europe for the aristocracy for hundreds of years. And in some cultures in Pakistan, India, and China, perhaps other cultures, there are also arranged marriages. So this is something to consider. You might have, again, more experience with that than I have. Then look at this one. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. A very, very strong statement that family, having a family, is a human right. Therefore, the state, the society, and the government should not do things to endanger families in any way. So if the government wants to break up a family or break up families in general, that would be a violation of human rights. In fact, if anyone is pushing to break up families and not have families anymore for some reason, is anti-family, then that would be a violation of people's human rights. Think about that. Here's number 17. Everyone has the right to own property as well in association with others, right property, life, liberty, and property. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. There's that arbitrarily again, meaning without the law. Sure, you can take someone's property, but it has to be a legal possession of that. You can't just steal somebody's property. There's a very strong statement about property right here. And one could, especially with the two of these together, one could certainly say, well, wait a minute, if I have property and somebody else destroys my property, then they're taking away my right to that property. Somebody, not according to law, if somebody by whim just decides to destroy my property, then I'm being deprived of my property, and that would be a violation of my human rights. So if somebody decides to burn down your house, or if somebody decides to steal all your things, or somebody decides to go into your store and take your stuff, why those things are, according to the world's Declaration of Human Rights, those things are human rights violations, human rights violations. So if you hear people talking about, oh, it's just property, it's not important, here you have clearly the world agreeing that owning property and having property is a human right. Here's Article 18. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Remember, this was in the Bill of Rights. This is right away in the First Amendment. Here you are. It takes Article 18 for the world. Not that these articles aren't in a particular order, except that one is more important to the other than the other. I'm just pointing that out. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This includes the right to change religion or belief and freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in private or public to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. Clearly, a strong statement of freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience. You can believe the way people are allowed to believe the way they want to believe. People have the freedom, the human right to decide what conscience here, what's good and bad, right? Religion, what's sacred and not, and freedom of thought, of course, what you want to think about, what you want to focus on. Very strong statement about freedom of thought. Here's Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. Here's the freedom of speech, right? We recognize that. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. So, for example, people on Twitter for over a number of years were banned from saying what they wanted to say. And it's clear here from this statement that people have a human right to express their ideas through any media. So those folks who denied people the ability to participate in media, Twitter and Facebook and things like that, and clearly there weren't any laws that said they could do that. Those people were violating other people's human rights. Think about that. You might thought it's a good idea that somebody is thrown off Twitter. You might think it's a good idea that people shouldn't have misinformation or put information out that's incorrect, for example. And it might be a good idea to do that. But what this article says, what the world agreed on, was the fact that people have this right to do this through any media, and you can't just take that right away from them. Well, maybe this could have been a better article if it referred to the law in some way, some legal way to protect people from bad information, but it doesn't. And in fact, in the United States, we don't have such a law because it's very tricky to try to stop people from saying what they want to say. You might feel, oh yeah, those people shouldn't say things, but as soon as somebody wants to stop you from saying something, then you might have a different point of view about it. Here you are. We can recognize this from the Bill of Rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. So, the right to protest, the right to start a business, the right to get together with other people and have a club or a group or a team or whatever you want to do. People have the right to do that. Of course, peacefully. That's not actually defined, but sometimes peaceful could mean according to law, but certainly an interpretation of peaceful would be not violent, however you want to interpret that. And look at this. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. So some of you may know about unions in different industries and how sometimes people have to join unions in order to be part of it, to work in a certain place. And here the world is saying, no, that would be a violation of human rights. So I'll just make a comment at this point. You can see through, we're not quite finished, but we will soon. You can see through all of these that there are many rights that have been decided on by the world as human rights, and you can probably recognize many situations in your own lives or people's lives or anything else where human rights were violated, where human rights were not respected, where nations didn't live up to their obligation to protect human rights. And so that's one of the things to think about when you're writing your essay. Sometimes that makes for important writing, for interesting writing. You could write your whole essay about three different ways in which governments here or anywhere in the world violated people's rights. So not even governments, three different sets of circumstances around the world where people's human rights were violated. For example, here's Article 21. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country, directly or through freely chosen representatives. This is a really strong statement in favor of democracy. Everyone has the right of equal access to public service in his country. Once again, people need to be treated equally under the law. Public services, things that everybody's entitled to in the country. And the will of the people shall be the basis of authority of government. You may recall in the Declaration of Independence, it says governments are founded to protect people's rights. And that's what they're echoing here, that the basis and the authority of government is that people accept it, people allow it, people agree on it. I know that's not necessarily the way governments relate to people or people relate to governments throughout the world, but this is the theory of human rights that we're looking at. This is the way governments are supposed to base their authority, on the will of the people. This will, the will of the people, shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections. Again, a very strong appeal for democracy, for voting. Yes, and genuine elections, not rigged elections, not false elections, but elections that are valid and true, which shall be by universal suffrage and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or equivalent free voting procedures. So you need a secret ballot so that people are not coerced. I want to vote for, and all of you might want to vote for somebody else. And there's so many of you and only one of me. You could influence me to vote a different way. You could scare me. And so secret vote, you don't know how I'm voting. And equal suffrage means that everybody, one person, one vote. Everybody has one vote. It's not that, well, I'm a rich person, so I have 5 votes, and you're a poor person, so you have 1 vote. No. One person, one vote, equal suffrage. Suffrage is the right to vote. Universal, meaning everybody has that right to vote. Now, of course, it could be everybody over the age of 18 or everybody living in a certain area, but everybody in the area that the election is the jurisdiction of the election itself. So again, a very powerful statement about democracy. Lots of places around the world where we don't have democracy. In fact, most countries don't have democracy. Many of them have bits and pieces of democracy, but here the world in 1948 is coming out strongly and saying, really, governments should be expressing the will of the people, not the government's will over the people, but the people should be the ones that are making the decisions, and the people are the ones the people are the basis of government, and people's agreement, people's will, people's desire to have that government rule over them is the only basis of authority of the government. Government does not have any authority unless the people want that government. At least that's what they're saying here is a human right. Article 22, everyone as a member of society has the right to social security. Now, when they say social security here, they don't mean, some of you may be familiar with the social security system in the United States, which is a retirement system which you pay in and you get money when you retire. It's not what they mean by social security here. They simply mean security in society. Social meaning society, and security meaning not to be endangered. Everyone, as a member of society, has a right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation, and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state. Everyone's entitled to the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for dignity and free development of his personality. Free development of his personality. That's the pursuit of happiness. Okay. Economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for dignity. Well, you tell me what those things are. Certainly, economic rights are a living wage, not having to live homeless, right? Being able to participate in the economic life of a country, to be able to afford food, clothing, housing, shelter, right? Social rights, the ability to relate equally to other people in the country or in your neighborhood or in your community, not to be shunned, not to be looked down upon in any way, and cultural rights, which could be anything from religion to any kind of morality, but all based on dignity. Remember, they started with everybody has a right to dignity, and so here they're bringing that notion back and saying everybody has to be respected. Dignity means respecting other people. Dignity means respect for other people. And that's what they're saying here. Everybody has the right to the respect of everyone, of other people, right? People should respect each other. Remember that word brotherhood I talked about real early in this lesson. This is all about brotherhood in a lot of ways. And the pursuit of happiness, the free development of his personality. Very nice way of saying pursuit of happiness from the Declaration of Independence. Article 23. This one's a little complicated. It's got 4 different parts here. And once again, deals with economic issues. Everyone has the right to work, right? You can't exclude people from being able to work. Everybody has the right to freely choose where they want to work. And everybody has the right to good conditions, good work conditions, and protection against unemployment, which you might think of as unemployment insurance, or you might think of it another way. But very strong statement that people need to work in order to participate in society, and so everybody has that right. Everyone without discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Some of you might be aware of the fact that even in the United States, men on the whole make more than women, and for different jobs, sometimes men and women make different amounts of money, and sometimes there are other kinds of discrimination that give people different wages in their work. Here, though, this for the same job, equal pay for equal work, same job, equal pay. Everyone has the right to fair and favorable remuneration. This means payment, right? Money. Everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity, and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. This would be, you may have heard a lot about the minimum wage, having a guaranteed minimum wage, having a floor. You can't make less than a certain amount. You may have also heard about payments to people who don't have enough money to help them to survive and have a roof over their heads and food to eat. And that's what this is really expressing, that everybody needs to be able to live in such a way, in a dignified way. Everybody needs to be respected. And if they don't have enough economic resources to be respected, then the state should step in, the government should step in, all the rest of society should step in and help them with those things. And then here, the last piece of this, everyone has the right to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. So it's because, oh, where'd that go? Sorry, here it is. This is because trade unions were certainly more controversial in 1948. Trade unions are when the workers organized together and then they bargained with the owners of the business in order to have better pay, better working conditions, things like that. And in some cases, trade unions were not legal, they were outlawed. And here's the attempt by the world in the United Nations, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to put forth the notion that that's one of those forms of association that people have the right to engage in. Now look at this one. You might be surprised at this one. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Look at that. I'm sure some of you are in jobs where you don't get periodic holidays with pay. In my particular position, I'm teaching adjunct part-time, so I don't get periodic holidays with pay. So are my human rights being deprived? And all the others that you know about who work without periodic holidays with pay. Look at that. That's such a strong statement about the way people should be allowed to live, the kind of life that people should have, no matter where they are in the world. There's another one that's a little involved. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for health and well-being of himself and his family. This is a living standard, a quality of life that's adequate for being healthy, including food, clothing, housing, medical care, social services. Look at that list. Right? So everybody should be able to eat, everybody should be able to wear clothing, everybody should have a home. Think of the homeless all over the United States, and of course, medical care and other necessary social services. Everyone has the right to security in the event of unemployment, right? That's their unemployment insurance idea. If they're sick or disabled, or widowed, then or they're of old age, they should have a right to security. People should be supported by the government, by the society, by everybody else, the people who fall into these kinds of categories who can't take care of themselves. The society has a right, has a responsibility to take care of them. They have a human right to be cared for. People who are disabled, people who are old, have a human right to be cared for by society. And then this one, motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. And of course, all children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection at one point in time. If children weren't born in a marriage, they were discriminated against. But here, special care and assistance for children and for mothers. Strong recognition of the special roles that children play and that mothers, of course. In 1948, there's a different idea of the division of responsibility in the family, but you can see how they were definitely recognizing that children are important and those who care for children are important, and they therefore they're more equal than others. They have a human right to special care and assistance over and above others. And here's one that you might not know about. Everyone, this has 3 parts, right? So we'll just break them up a little bit like that. Everyone has a right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. So education is free in the lower grades, and compulsory means children must go to school. Everybody has a right to education, but everybody also has a responsibility to education. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available to everybody, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. In other words, you should be able to go to college, higher education, college, or professional school based on how well you perform, how well you deserve it based on your performance in school. That's what merit means here. You earn the right to be able to go to college. And contrast that with things such as a quota system, where we're going to take into the college a certain number of this type of person and a certain number of that type of person, a certain number of another type of person, for purposes of what is called equity. Well, here, the world is agreeing that higher education should be accessible on the basis of merit. You perform, you can get higher education, not the color of your skin or who you voted for or where you live or how much money you have, rather on the basis of merit. Second part is really the second part, not the third. Education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality. There's that pursuit of happiness again. And to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. That's what education is all about. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendships among nations, racial or religious groups, and of course, further the activities in the nations for the maintenance of peace. But here, the idea behind education is that tolerance and friendship among people should be promoted, not teaching one group that another group is bad, but rather teaching people from different backgrounds to understand and tolerate and be friends with people from other racial, religious, or ethnic or nationalities. Think about that. And look at this one. Parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Some of you may have been following some of the issues in the news. where teachers' unions in some schools want to teach a certain way and parents want something else. Well, right here it says that it's the parents that have the human right and a prior right, meaning more fundamental than the right of the state or the society. Parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. It's a human right for parents to decide what kind of education their children should have. A human right on the same level as, do you have a human right to life, and you have a human right to liberty, and you have a human right to dignity? On even prior to that, parents have a right to choose the kind of education that should be given to their children. So anybody who wants to tell parents that they're doing the wrong thing are going to be violating parents' human rights. Look at this. Everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community and to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advances and advancement and its benefits. So how about free Wi-Fi for everybody, right? Scientific advancements. What's the best way to make sure that everybody can fully participate? Then everybody should have it. Telephones, televisions, computers, things of that nature. Think about that. Is that what they're saying? Everyone has the right to protection of the moral and material interest resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he is an author. This is intellectual property. If you create something, if you write something, if you design something, then you have the right to whatever material interest, whatever money might be made off of that invention. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. This is getting a little bit down to the end, a little bit like Amendment 9 and Amendment 10 in the Bill of Rights, which guaranteed that the states had the rights, the people had the rights. Okay, here's Article 29. Everybody has duties to the community, in which alone the free and full development of personality is possible. So here is a very strong statement. Not only do you have freedoms, not only do you have human rights, but you have human responsibilities. You have duties to the community. So rights are one side, responsibilities are the other side. And here's a recognition that they go hand in hand. In the exercise of his rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations are determined by law. There's that very strong statement about the significance of the law. And the law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others. So the laws should be designed to protect everyone's rights. And those laws that protect everyone's rights are the valid laws to limit what I do, what my rights are. My freedom ends at the tip of your nose. I can't deprive, by my actions, I can't deprive you of your rights. The laws should be based on that. And of meeting the just requirements of morality, public order, and the general welfare in a democratic society. And there's once again that strong statement about democracy. Here's one of those catch-all phrases. These rights and freedoms in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. They don't want anybody to misconstrue what's being said here and take away anyone's rights because it says they're interpreting what it says here in a particular way. Just like this. Nothing in this declaration shall be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights or freedoms set forth herein. So you can't use some particular article here to say, for example, enslave people or torture people or take away people's rights. That's not the point here. And there you have all of the articles of the Human Rights Declaration. What you need to do is, and of course you have this class and you have the writing itself, you need to do some research, figure out which topic or topics you want to focus on, and definitely use the Human Rights Declaration as one of the sources, but you need 3 other sources that you find, preferably in the library, but it could be on Google or the internet. You need to use MLA formatting. Do that for your title page, do that for your quotations, your in-text citations, and do that for your works cited page. Okay, let me stop there. Yes, you're good. Somebody's asking, are we going to get this in Blackboard? Yes, all of this, all the notes will be in Blackboard, and of course, the recording is available to you. How are we doing out there? Anybody have any idea what they want to write about? Anything?
Yes.
Do you like sharing? Okay.
Professor, I have a question.
Sure.
So we pick one article and write about it?
You can pick one, you can pick two, you can pick three, you can pick a portion of one article, a portion of another article. You could pick an article that has three different parts. This is very wide open. Or you might even say, oh, I want to write about slavery in the world today, even though it's, that would only be one small article. Or I want to write about anything else related to human rights. You might know of a situation in the past or the present that where people's human rights are being violated or supported, and you want to write about that. This essay is really much more wide open than the others. You can simply choose to write about any three articles in there, even the short ones, just like you did with the Bill of Rights or with the Declaration of Independence, where we wrote about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can just choose any three of those human rights and write about those. That's fine. Or you can take it in another direction if you want. This is a little harder because I'm giving you so much freedom in terms of what you can write about. Questions? You know what? Come back for sure on Thursday. If you haven't started your essay, come back with some ideas about what you'll write about. And I'll work out a little bit more time to do the essays. Okay? Don't be afraid of it. If everybody comes back with a good idea on Thursday, then I'll see what I can do about making this the last essay. Think about that. Okay?
When is it due for essay 3?
Okay, let's take a look at that. Just what did I say? Here is. So I'm initially I said Thursday, but I don't know. Seems like too much to do for Thursday. So let's just put it off here to February 6th. There we go. We're gonna make that essay first draft will be due Monday. Actually, let's make it Tuesday. Here, we'll make it Tuesday. There we are. Okay. Okay, so the first draft we'll make due on Tuesday the 6th. All right? Give you a little bit more time. I think you're going to need it.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. And if they have any questions about your essay, you can call me or text me or email me and ask those questions if you're not sure what to do. Certainly, if you're confident about it, just take the ball and run with it. I'll take first drafts anytime you're willing to send them in. Okay, anybody else? Questions, issues, concerns, complaints? If you haven't gotten essay number 2 finalized, you should do that and send that in to me, please. Okay, everybody, that's going to be it for today. I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.